If you've ever tried following a baking recipe to the letter, you might have noticed something curious. Some recipes call for baking soda, others demand baking powder, and occasionally, both show up in the same list. At first glance, they look almost identical, just little white powders sitting in your pantry jars. But don't be fooled, they are far from the same thing. Confusing them can turn what should be light, golden brown pancakes into a heavy, flat disappointment. Today, we're going to unpack the mystery, what baking soda and baking powder really are, how each one works, why they aren't interchangeable, and even some surprising ways they can be used beyond baking. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which one to reach for the next time you're whipping up muffins, cookies, or any other sweet treats. Let's jump into the fascinating world of baking soda versus baking powder. Let's kick things off with baking soda. Scientifically, it's called sodium bicarbonate, a simple alkaline compound that only springs into action when it meets something acidic. On its own, it's pretty quiet, almost like a sleeping giant. But the moment it comes into contact with acids like lemon juice, vinegar, buttermilk, or even cocoa powder, the real magic begins. That reaction releases carbon dioxide gas, forming tiny bubbles that get trapped in your batter or dough. Those bubbles are what make your cakes rise, your muffins airy, and your pancakes delightfully fluffy. That's why baking soda earns the title of a leavening agent. It literally lifts your baked goods. There's a catch, though. Baking soda reacts almost immediately. As soon as it meets an acid, the bubbles start forming, which is why recipes that rely solely on baking soda usually insist you bake right away. Wait too long, and those precious gas bubbles escape, leaving your muffins or cakes flat and dense instead of light and fluffy. Now, let's talk about baking powder, which is a bit more sophisticated. Think of it as baking soda's self-sufficient cousin. Unlike baking soda, baking powder already comes with both an acid and a base, all bundled up in one convenient little package. Most commonly, it's a combination of baking soda, cream of tartar, which provides the acid, and sometimes a bit of cornstarch to keep things dry and prevent clumping. The real brilliance of baking powder is that it doesn't rely on you to add any extra acidic ingredients to the mix. It's ready to work on its own, just toss it into your batter, and the chemical reaction will do the rest. But here's where things get really interesting. Most of the baking powders you find in stores today are what's called double-acting, which means they work in two separate stages. The first reaction kicks in as soon as the powder meets moisture, like when you stir it into your cake or muffin batter. The second reaction waits until it's exposed to heat in the oven. This clever two-step process gives your baked goods an extra boost, helping them rise evenly, even if you don't rush to bake the batter immediately. Now, here's a question that trips up a lot of home bakers: can you swap baking soda and baking powder? The short answer is usually no. If you accidentally use baking soda in place of baking powder, your recipe might not rise at all unless the batter happens to contain enough acid to trigger a reaction. And even then, the taste can turn a little off, sometimes metallic or soapy, because baking soda is far stronger and more concentrated than baking powder. On the flip side, if you swap baking soda for baking powder, your treats might still rise, but the flavor and texture could end up a bit off. Because baking powder already contains acid, it can give your recipe a slightly tangy taste. And since it's not as strong as baking soda, you might not get the full lift you were hoping for. The golden rule? Stick to what the recipe calls for. If you ever need to make a substitution, it's possible, but you'll have to carefully tweak the amounts and balance the acidic ingredients to get it right. Here's another question that puzzles many bakers: why would a recipe include both baking soda and baking powder? If one can make things rise, why add the other? The secret lies in achieving the perfect balance of flavor and texture. Some recipes include acidic ingredients, but not enough to fully react with the baking soda. A little baking soda helps neutralize that acidity and enhances browning, while baking powder provides the extra lift needed for a perfectly airy result. A classic example is chocolate cake. Cocoa powder is slightly acidic, but not enough on its own to give the batter the rise it needs. That's why many chocolate cake recipes call for both baking soda and baking powder, to get the perfect combination of lift, flavor, and texture. But here's where things get really interesting. Both baking soda and baking powder have uses beyond the oven. Let's start with baking soda. Baking soda has earned a reputation as a natural, multi-purpose cleaner. People use it to scrub sinks, deodorize refrigerators, and even freshen up carpets. Its gentle abrasiveness makes it perfect for cleaning without scratching surfaces. On top of that, it's great at neutralizing odors, whether it's in your trash can, your sneakers, or even as a toothpaste alternative to freshen your breath. As for baking powder, it doesn't have nearly as many tricks up its sleeve. It's mostly a kitchen-only ingredient, though a few people have experimented with it for cleaning. If your goal is to freshen up your fridge or tackle stubborn odors, stick with baking soda. It's the true multitasker. Now, let's cover some common mistakes people often make with these ingredients. Using too much baking soda can leave your baked goods with a bitter or metallic taste. Remember, a little really goes a long way. Another mistake is waiting too long to bake when using baking soda. Its reaction starts the moment it meets an acid, so if you delay, the gas bubbles escape and your muffins or cakes can turn out flat. And don't forget that baking powder has a shelf life. Over time, it loses its strength, so if it's been sitting in your pantry for years, it may not give your recipes the rise they need. Yes, baking powder does lose its punch over time. If it's been sitting in your pantry for years, you can test it easily. Mix a little with hot water. If it doesn't bubble and fizz, it's time to toss it and grab a fresh batch. Another common pitfall is trying to swap baking soda and baking powder without adjusting the amounts. They're not one-to-one replacements. If you ever need to make a substitution, take the time to research the right ratios, otherwise, your baked goods might not turn out as planned. So, what's the big takeaway? While baking soda and baking powder may look identical, they each have a very distinct role in your kitchen. Baking soda needs an acid to activate and reacts almost instantly, while baking powder comes with its own acid and usually works in 2 stages for a more dependable rise. The next time you're making banana bread, pancakes, or muffins, you'll know exactly why the recipe calls for one over the other. It's not random, it's chemistry in action, transforming simple pantry staples into something light, fluffy, and absolutely irresistible. Thanks so much for watching. If you have ideas for our next video, drop them in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. We're thrilled you joined us on this journey through the world of the ordinary, uncovering the little details that make life fascinating. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you won't miss the next story hidden in everyday things.